packed up. This one's in the library. This one's mine. If you really like it and want to borrow it, talk to me. I probably would let you. And I have another one here that's more broad projects, but also has some good box shapes. So if you want to browse around and take a look at some things you might want to make. The process is generally pretty similar no matter what shape you do, so it's kind of fun to play around with them. And I would say that this book has a lot of really interesting, very pretty designs. I'm very much into like things that look pretty. So he does a lot of just really nice shape stuff. So might be worth taking a look, getting some inspiration there. I certainly have made a lot of them. So you can see up here a bunch of different boxes that I have made. This is kind of a shape that I did for when I was doing a craft show and I needed to make a whole bunch of them really fast. So I just made a whole bunch of the same ones. So that I had, I don't know, I probably made like 30 or something of these little boxes. So they go really fast. And it's a shape that I particularly like because it's nice and curved. But other ones are equally pretty. You can do things like inlaying in the top. This one has, what are those things called? Tago nuts? Yeah, I think it's a slice of tago nut, which is interesting. It smells really good when you turn it. It smells like something you might eat, like with a nut. Lots of things you can do there. Another thing you can do is you can mix woods. So this one is holly with walnut, which is actually copied from one of the books. So you'll probably see one just like that in there. So that can be a nice way of getting some variety. The other thing I wanted to call out before we actually do any turning is your selection of wood can be important for this, especially if you want to do a nice snugly fitted lid. A lot of times you want to try to do a grain match, and this has really good grain match, really pretty. And that can be a nice little thing to show off. Wood turners especially like to see that. I don't know if the general public likes it as much as I do. But one of the things you might want to think about is selecting your wood with some kind of prominent grain pattern. This is a spalted maple with a little bit of the worm thing, ambrosia, the ambrosia beetle. So it has some of those really strong lines in it. I think that box elder works especially well as well because you get the pink lines there. So things with lines are really cool because then you can like see where you can match it up and see how this is all one piece of wood, and that's like a little nice little thing about wood turning. So if I was going to do this and like I had two pieces of wood here and I was looking at them, I would probably, if I want to make the best box I can make, I'd probably pick this one because it's got a pretty strong grain pattern. This is some of that spalted maple with a little bit of ambrosia in it. And this one is just a plain old piece of cherry. It's going to be really fun and easy to turn, especially because unless you want to rough turn and wait, which I don't like doing, I'm very impatient, you're probably going to want to find a piece of really well-seasoned wood. If you turn with anything even slightly green, your lids are never going to fit after they dry. It's just not going to happen. So pick something really seasoned. These have been sitting around my basement for 5 or 6 years, so I'm pretty sure they're fine. But anything else, you can do rough turning. I think in the Richard Raffin book, he talks about rough turning down the boxes and letting them sit for a while to dry, which you absolutely can do. Otherwise, turn from seasoned wood and you'll have more success with your lids continuing to fit. And yeah, that's it. That's the demo right there. In case you were thinking I was going to turn with this top on, no. And you'll have to bear with me. I don't turn very much anymore. You guys probably noticed that. So, this might be a little rough. We'll see how it goes. And I've never turned on this lathe before, ever.
Sure.
I think I see how it works.
Gotta have it in neutral first.
Oh.
Then turn it on.
Like this?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
And then here's your speed.
Okay, cool.
Oh, I don't
know how to turn it on. Is that on?
Hang on.
Oh, okay. It doesn't matter that much. Nothing terribly exciting, just, you know, that's probably round. I'm used to doing it like a hard off. This is a little. All right. So I've got a piece of wood here that's generally round. When you're turning a lidded box, there's a couple different ways to do it. I like to do ones where the lids are hollow. And most of my boxes here have this, where you have the box here that's hollowed out and you have a lid that's hollowed out. You don't have to do that. And if you're making something in mass for like a craft fair, you might want to do something that's a little faster. Aside from the fact that this has a separately turned finial, it would be faster just to make a little disc here that sits inside this inside this box, because you don't have to hollow this out. I think I did actually, because I just how I do things, because I put a stone in there. But you know, it might be faster just to make something that's a solid piece on the top. And some of the books talk about that as different options. I'm just going to show you the method I use for hollowing out both ends. We should have time for most of it. I'm not going to do any sanding. We'll go pretty quick. So the way I like to do this is I start with my parting tool, and I'm going to make a tenon on each end of my. Did I bring a parting tool? Yes, I did. All right. So I'm going to make a tenon on each end here, and just make something that'll fit in my chuck, which I'm just going to kind of eyeball. Boxes is you can pretty much make them out of any size wood. I'm using a 3-inch blank here, but I've made them out of things as small as like 1.5-inch square, and you can make really fun little tiny things. So the cute tiny stuff like Terry's little bowls can be done with boxes too. Got a kind of big tenon, but should be all right. You want to dovetail these if you're using a dovetail chuck. I'm not using a dovetail chuck tonight, but I might do just a little bit of it anyway. All right. So the next thing I want to think about before I do anything else is I'm going to think about the design of my box and where I want my lid to go versus where I want the rest of my box to be. From a design perspective, typically people will recommend something pretty elegant, like the golden ratio or something like that. I like to think of it in thirds, like a third of it's going to be the lid and 2/3 are going to be the body. But sometimes I don't do that, like these. I like the lids to be pretty thin. It's kind of a personal preference sort of thing. I've seen some boxes, and this one's kind of like that, where it's about the line between the lid and the body is really about halfway up. It's really a design preference, though a lot of, quote, design experts would say you want to put some thought into where you want that line to be. I usually use a pencil, didn't bring one today, so I'm just going to kind of eyeball it and think that I probably am going to want mine to be somewhere up here, where this is going to be my lid and this is going to be the body. What I'm going to do in order to facilitate that, oh, there we go. Thank you. So I'm going to take a look at this, and I'm just going to draw it here on the lathe, and I can kind of see what that's going to look like, and I feel pretty good about that proportion. And if I don't like it, I can just turn it off or erase it that way and sand it off and draw another line. But that gives me a chance to sort of visualize what I want it to be. And if I was going to think about drawing this as maybe one of the box shapes there, I could think about it something like, sort of drawing out here on my blank. I'll turn that to you guys, where you can kind of see, like, you can kind of get a picture of what you might want to do. Of course, the different shapes have different things. You can think about it like this, but this is just one thought of what I might do there. I have no idea what it's going to look like right now. You know, I'm just going to kind of wing it as we do this. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to turn a tenon that is going to allow the two parts of our box to fit together. So that's going to be in this case, like this tenon here. Now, something that a very wise wood turning teacher told me is that he always likes to put the tenon on the box end and not on the lid end. It could go either direction. It could be it's perfectly fine to have your lid fit into your box rather than on, like onto. The tenon can come out of this end as well. But this way, your box holds a little bit more stuff. If your box is just like, a 1/4 of an inch taller here because the tenon is on this side. So that's what, he said. He was very practical. I kind of have to admire that. And that's how I learned to turn boxes. So it's kind of generally how I do it. Most of the designs you see out there are kind of like that, unless there's a design decision like this one to sort of recess it and sit it inside, which is lovely as well. But this way I can just, put a few more things in here. And I actually, we'll talk about box lid fit in a minute. Kind of the purpose for them might make you decide to do different things. I put all sorts of crap in these. You have no idea how much stuff is on my desk right now that I had to like empty out of all these little tiny boxes because they all had stuff in them. Every single one of those had things in it. So I'm going to go back to my parting tool. Where did I put it? Here it is. And I'm going to just cut a really simple little tenon on the box end of it, not the lid end. And I'm going to give myself a little bit of room. I want a pretty good sized shoulder right here. I want to have a good shoulder on the box. I don't want it to get too thin there because I want to have some room in case I mess up my design, maybe, those sorts of things. You want just a little bit of room to play with. So I'm going to go in maybe 1/8 of an inch or so, something like that. That's something that's pretty reasonable there. And then while I'm here, I'm going to actually take a little bit more off. And I don't want to do all that much, but I want my tenon to be pretty good size because I want to have, enough room for some screw ups. And then now, what I'm going to do is use another tool, a narrow parting tool, which if you don't have one, I don't know if Roger for a while was just giving away pieces of old bandsaw blades, and a lot of people made them out of that. So a lot of people around here I know have those and may still have some of those blanks around. I bought one, I couldn't find it, so I'm thankfully borrowing one from Keith, so that we can do this. But the really cool thing about this is it's super thin. This is about as thin as you can get for a turning tool, and you're not going to lose a lot of wood. And when you start to think about the matching of the grain, the smaller the kerf you have, the better match on your grain pattern you're going to have. So you want the smallest one possible. You can totally do this with a full-size parting tool. It's perfectly fine, but you're going to lose a lot more wood, and this way you just lose less wood. And you don't want to, burn it too bad. Essentially, I'm just trying to cut this off of the lathe with the parting tool. That's all I'm trying to do. It's very hard for me to see. Oh, there we go. Getting pretty close. Before I do that, I'm going to clear up just a little bit here that I hit that with a narrow parting tool, and I don't want any marks there really. I can do that later too, but it's fine now. And mostly, this is going a little too fast. I am just going to try to get this off. That is pretty close, and if I get it just a little bit more, I can just twist it apart. That's probably going to come apart. If not, that's what saws are for, right? Is it this way? This way. I did that all between centers. Some people will mount them between, just need just a little, do we have any saws? Do we have a saw in there? No. It's really close to being.
Come on, let Mary in the corner.
You want to try it? I mean, you know I can't open jars. Oh, see, there we go. Okay. Hey.
Get it started for you, right?
Yeah, totally.
That's my wife.
Is that your hero?
What?
Is that your hero?
Yeah, totally. But if he would have at home, you just I would texted him and he would have just been like, he's a saw. Where's my, here we go. You can do this all in a chuck if you want to, but you're gonna have to turn the chuck around so you can mount the square blank in your chuck if your chuck is big enough and do it that way. I like to do between centers like this. Right. I'm going to start out with the body of the, do I want to do the, yeah, I want to do the body first. We're going to get that done. It's going to be, okay. Now, am I gonna do this?
It should come all the way off.
Yeah. I just wasn't sure if I would be able to do it without getting that in the way. All right. Next up, we're going to hollow out this box. Now, I kind of know what shape I'm going to do, so I'm just going to hollow it. If you wanted to play around with the shape a little bit, you could do that first. I'm going to do the shape predominantly at the end and just get this all hollowed out here a little bit. It's not going to be a very big box, it's not going to hold a lot of stuff. You might want to think about what you want to put in your box. If you want to put jewelry in it, you might want to make it of a particular size if you have something in mind for it. I just make the boxes whatever size they want to be and then kind of put whatever I feel like in them. Hollowing. You have a couple of options tool-wise for hollowing. I tend to use a bowl gouge and just kind of treat it like a bowl. There's a bunch of different ways people hollow. Richard Raffin does this amazing thing that I cannot figure out called back hollowing, where he's actually hollowing on, like, it's on the wrong side of the wood. It's mind blowing. You're holding the tool flute out and cutting on the back side. I cannot make this work for me. I've tried. You're obviously welcome to try that all out. There's probably videos. There are, in fact, videos in the library. Richard Raffin has a video in the library. Reiki, there's 3 Reiki videos in the library. He does beautiful boxes. Passed away recently, if I remember correctly. But his boxes are really beautiful, and those are in the library ready to be checked out. I'm just going to do pretty simple hollowing, kind of quick with a bowl gouge. Scrapers, you can use scrapers as well. You want them very sharp, and make sure that your tool rest is a little on the higher side of things. You always want your scraper pointed slightly down, and they can be just a little grabby. I do use scrapers for cleaning things up in the boxes occasionally, but be cautious with them. They're slower than bowl gouges, and they also can really catch pretty easy. So be aware. It didn't mount perfectly round here, so I'm actually going to clean it up from the outside first. Make sure I don't have anything in the way there. It looks all right. Might just be my chuck. hint of shape there. There we go. That's nice and round. Well, while I've got my tool rest here, I'll just do like a little bit of a maybe something like that to kind of have a hint of what the shape might be. Oh shoot. Is that going to be okay? No, I have to do the whole thing again.
Yeah.
I am just very,
Put it to neutral.
yeah, I'm very accustomed to using my big button on mine. Alright, got that.
Then what's it
Green.
called?
Okay, that came on.
Okay, now you,
Now to forward, and then I can do the, okay.
yeah.
Alright, my tool rest is a little bit high, so I'm just going to fix that before I go any further. One thing to think about, I'm kind of establishing where I want the inside of my box to be. I don't want my rim here where my tenon is to get too thin. You can see some there that are dangerously thin. There's one at home. I did that. It was actually beautiful, and it was a lovely box, and it won a prize at once even, and then I dropped it, and it broke the rim, or the tenon where the lid fit on. It broke off because it was so thin. So that's a sad box at my house right now. It was pretty once upon a time. Yeah. Chuck is coming off. Why would it be doing that? That's very strange.
Did you happen to turn it in reverse accidentally?
No, because it wouldn't have been cutting. No. Why would it be doing that?
Lock it and then just crank it.
Okay. All right. Oh no, not my leg. And now everything's out. Well, we'll just do a little correction here. Don't know what's going on there.
Oh, I bet you, we never did.
To do what?
It may have been not seated all the way down on the thing, it finally seated itself.
Oh. Oh, I see. Well, I mean, something, it would explain why it was out of round when I put it on. An adapter, or?
I haven't put in on any other shots other than the front.
Gotcha. All right, let's try this again. from the inside towards the outside, which is a kind of cool thing with end grain that you don't want to do on a bowl, but does work fine on a box. And kind of drill in the middle and come out. I have to kind of decide how deep I want to go here. Comparable depth here to some of my little boxes I've done over there. Not a super big box, but pretty easy to hollow. The deeper you go, of course, the harder it's going to get because you're going to get further and further away from your tool rest. A lot of chatter can happen down there. I didn't bring some of the deeper ones I've done, but I don't know, this one's kind of a good example of one that was more difficult because it was a little deeper. It also has an undercut, which is a little bit of a pain. But you can kind of do whatever. I think I'm getting, yeah, I can do just a little bit more here, and we'll call this good. I could maybe use a little bit of a scraper. There's a couple little tool marks at the bottom. I'm not especially concerned about it because we're just kind of showing this off. Yeah, that's pretty much what I'm going to do for hollowing. And so now I'm going to kind of refine the shape a little bit on the outside, and then we will flip it around and turn the, well, we'll work on the lid next, and then we'll do some flipping around. So here I just am going to kind of work a little bit on what I want my final shape to be and kind of figure out where I want the bottom of my box to be. I'm not actually going to make the bottom clear at the bottom of the blank. We're going to part it off before there, or eventually cut it off. What do we do here?
Carrie, have you ever glued a piece of wood on it and done it that way with a glue block so you can save for a bit of your wood?
Yeah, I have done that for things that I have very little wood. You can use a glue block; it's perfectly fine. It might be if it's a really challenging piece to hollow, you might struggle with that glue block. But something that's pretty soft would be just fine. Hollowing something like that Osage orange when it's dry, you might have a real hard time with. I would certainly probably never hollow Purple Heart. There's certain decisions I make for my own happiness, but anything that's relatively soft, like a maple or something like that, be just fine. Spindle gouge for this as well. I didn't bring one, so I'm just using my bowl gouge. I could probably use a skew if I was very good at it. I am not very good at a skew. I do have I don't think I brought. I have a really tiny a detail gouge. It has a lot of meat on the shaft of the tool, but it's kind of a shallow flute for a spindle gouge. That's really good at, like, if I want to make the base of it really tiny. Like that, it's really good at sort of getting into those grooves. This one is going to be a little bit clunkier, but it'll be just fine. is starting to look nice to me. I have a little bit of a curve going here. I like curves instead of straight lines. That's generally something I'm looking for when I think about shapes. And if you look in the if you look in the books, there's a lot of great examples. Some of my examples are not great, but I learned. This has been one of my favorite things since I first started turning. So I have a lot of examples over many years of turning. Kind of like my first bowl was very much straight-sided. All right, so this is roughly the shape that I want for my box. Now, if I was gonna like finish this for our demonstration, I would sand and finish the box right now, especially the inside. I want that completely finished. The outside, I might want to sand right now, but I can come back to that later. But I do want to get the inside finished while it's here on the lathe, and I can access it because later I won't have access to it. And that gets us most of the way done with the box, and then we're going to do the lid. So now we're going to sit this over here real handy because we're going to need that. And this is going to be my lid. The way I'm going to handle this is I'm going to fit it to that box first thing. That's what I want to do. And then if I screw it up, I can cut away what I didn't fit, and we can fix that later, or fix that before we move too much further. But I want to make sure that I have a lid that's going to fit, and then we can kind of fuss about the hollowing of it and whatever shape we want to get. Okay. Yeah. I do have this like rough wood threads. I'm going to cut those off so they don't get in my way. But what I'm going to do is maybe first do it. I mean, you could do kind of an eyeball thing. You can draw, like you can like get your pencil out and try to draw the size. I'm just going to kind of eyeball it. We'll see how it goes. I might screw it up. You never know. First thing I'm going to do is get rid of all this extra wood thread. Scalp this one on. All right. And I'm just going to clean this up and make sure it has a nice flat face. And then I'm going to use a cutting tool. I don't know, this is how I was taught. It seems like a pretty good tool for the purpose, and I'm just going to go straight in and make like an indent of where I think I want my rim to be, and we'll see how well I guessed. It's probably not very well, which is fine. But then we'll make adjustments. So I mean, it's way too small right now. This is never going to fit on there. But it's better too small than too big. Yes. Well, if it's too big, then you've just made a box that is meant for delicate things like jewelry and spices that you don't want to just go flying everywhere when you have to pull the lid off. So you just spin what you're going to use it for. Anything that needs a relatively easy opening lid, those are the ones that don't have the friction fit. But if we're going to go for a good friction fit, I need this to be just a little bit bigger, so I'm just going to kind of keep testing out the size. And then once I'm pretty close but still a little bit small, I'll kind of stop there. And just remember, every cut you make is twice as big as you're making it, because it's cutting on both sides of your opening, so you don't want to cut too much away. I still got some room there. Yeah. There might be a faster way to do this, but I don't really know one. I just test it until I get it pretty close. I'm also fairly cautious because I've done this a bunch of times and screwed it up. That's it right there. That's a little bit big, so that would be a loose fitting lid, but we've got room to make that a little bit tighter. So Let's go here. Okay. All right, so I've decided where my lid sit is going to be. It's going to be right there. I'm going to go in a little ways with my parting tool, kind of establish that. Got 2 lines there. All right, let's try that out. Yeah, that's going to be fine. Thank you. I'm cheating here. I'm just cutting away the part that I know doesn't fit very well. It was a little bit loose, and I only am losing maybe a 1/16 of an inch there. But that way, I think I'll have a little bit better fit. Starting from there. Okay, so I've got my size relatively close. It's not perfect. I'm going to hollow out the middle so then we can get a real perfect fit. And this isn't going to be a super deep thing. I just need enough space, really, to fit the whole tenon in there. Not all that different from hollowing out the box itself. This is a great place for things like the detail tools, like the chatter tools and texture tools. I also like to put stones in mine. Some of them have precious stones stuck in there. That's fun. Cindy Drozda likes to use an earring. She'll buy earrings and then you can set them in there. There's lots of different options. It's kind of fun to embellish the inside of your box because, especially a lot of times, these boxes go to ladies because they're kind of nice for jewelry and we like pretty things. Or at least I do. All right, that is pretty darn close to the right size, maybe a little deeper. Okay. Let's do a quick check here. It is not quite fitting, but it's really close. So there's a couple things you can do. You can just keep using your parting tool and just take off tiny little bits of wood at a time and until you get that nice friction fit. One of the other things you can do is if you have a spare scraper, this is a square nose scraper, but the cool thing is the side has been sharpened. It's not really doing much on the front. It's all on the side. And that can be used to just very gently peel off a few layers of wood. So just custom make your tool to do what you want it to do. I haven't used this one since I don't know when, but we'll see what's going on with it. I didn't pull this one out to practice this week when I was getting ready. No, this tool rest is way too low for that tool. That tool is tiny compared to what I was just using. So I'm just going to go in really, really gently on the side. And oh yeah, that's a nice little scraper. Good job, Brent. And it's just very gently scraping the side. And you know, it didn't land on the sharp end or on my foot. It's still not quite there. Actually, it might really need a cut rather than just a scrape. Probably should have worn shop-ready shoes instead of, flats here, but. that may have been a little too much. We'll see. No, it's not. It's very close. And the better you get this fit, the better the next steps go. Because we're actually going to put the thing together and turn it all in one piece. Oops, okay. All right, that's super close. I can get it in there, but it would never come off again. So it's just got to have a little bit more. In fact, this is probably the point where the scraper is the perfect tool. All right, this is the point where you think, oh, I could just use a hammer and mallet and get that in there real good, and you're right. There we go. That's actually a pretty nice fit. It has a nice little pop when you pull it off. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, the next thing we want to do is I'm going to leave this on here and turn this together. We're going to turn the profile of this box, and I'm going to turn the bottom of it off. I'm going to do that. Yeah. I had to do a little bit of a mental assessment there. I'm really lazy. And if I can reverse chuck this in the jaws of my chuck, I want to do that instead of making a jam chuck, because you can make a jam chuck for any of these things and fit them on there and reverse turn them that way. If I can make a jam chuck, or if I can use my jaws of my chuck instead of making a jam chuck, I'm like really happy about that. And I think it'll fit just fine. It's not going to be so delicate I can't do it. So I'm going to get the box turned the rest of the way. And now is where
You need this back.
I need that back.
If I move the light, it's right over the camera.
Oh yeah. Sorry, I didn't need it there anymore. That was only for that one thing.
Just take the thing right off.
Thank you. All right. This still has my divot in the bottom from when I turned it around, so it's going to go on here real nicely and should just be a nice, easy turn here.
Are you lining up your grain right now too?
I'm not. I did not line up the grain right now. I don't really care. It's going to all be round.
Okay.
I don't know if it makes a difference. I do sometimes, if I get a little bit of a slack fit, I put a piece of paper towel in the lid to make it fit a little bit more snug, so I don't end up with it spinning and burning. I think this is fitting pretty snug, so it should be okay. I didn't have a paper towel handy either. All right, let's see what this does. I mean, I could actually probably just leave it like this and just maybe sand off the bottom a little bit. I'm probably going to part it though up a little bit. One of the things, design things I want to talk to you about is up here where you have the join between your box and your lid. I didn't hollow my lid quite enough, so there's like actually a natural little gap there. Usually that fits pretty snug. You want to make some kind of a chamfer or something on one of these, like some kind of line, a visual line. People really like to see that. I don't know, it's like a thing you expect to do. You expect to be able to see where the lid is. So like just some kind of divot that you can put your fingers into, or like on this I changed direction. If you have something there to indicate where the lid is, it makes more sense in people's heads. I don't know, one of the books explains it in probably better terms than I did. But it's just something that you might want to think about. In this case, I just want to make a nice, I'm just going to kind of continue the shape, maybe in just a little bit, and it's going to say that the top of the box is going to be like right here. That's what I want to do as the top of my box. So I just want to have a nice gentle curve going to that. And I might want to cut, just like I said, just sort of a little chamfer here, just kind of a little bit of an angle on each side of that connection. Do a good proper cut here. All right, that ought to be just fine. Looks like a box. Sand it, you know, all that stuff. I'm going to part it off and not going to reverse turn the bottom. I could, but it's not that important to me. When I part, I'm going to part sort of inward so that it will be a little bit concave on the bottom. It'll just sit better on your table. It's very slippery over here. Which is fine. It's I just would say use a chisel and cut off the little nub. That's all we got there. Which means the bottom of the box is done, other than that little nub that I would sand off. And now we're going to do the outside of the top of the box. Again, you can use a jam chuck for all of this, and that's what most of the books are going to recommend because you don't end up with any marks on it. I'm a little bit I don't really care all that much about getting a couple marks on things. So I'm actually just going to use my jaws here and expand into the lid very gently. I don't want to do it too hard because I don't want to break my box, but I think it'll hold just fine. One other thing that I brought in, I don't think I'm going to use it, but I do sometimes use a live center with just a flat side. So I don't want to necessarily make my hole any bigger, but I want to have that support there. You could do that for sure. In this case, I'm just going to use this one until it's at a point where I can't anymore, and then it'll be held just fine. This will just help it have some support while I cut away a little bit more of the big material on the outside here, and then we'll actually finish the top nice without any center in place.
Carrie,
Yeah.
lock your tail
Lock
stop.
your tail stop at the leg.
My
Tail stop.
Oh, it's not.
Big leg.
Yes.
You might want to get your bottom of your box off too, off the leg so it don't fall off.
Over here? Yeah. I use that storage on my lathe all the time.
Tool off the lathe bed before it falls on your foot.
This is not, this needs adjusted. There we go. All right. have to go through the ritual over here. Okay. Getting better at that. All right, so I kind of made a mark of where I want the top of my box to be, so I'm just going to take away some material there. I just kind of want a flat top to my box, so nothing fancy, but you could do like pointy tops on boxes are great, finials are great, depending on how much wood you've got. You can do some really cool things. I don't know, maybe I will do a little bit of a point here, but we'll see.
You ever mark the depth on the outside?
I don't. I might be a little bit of a danger, person flirting with danger, but I usually don't mark it. You could certainly, to make sure that you're not going to cut it into the lid of your box. I don't do thin boxes really because thin boxes aren't very sturdy. So you usually have quite a bit of room, or I like to leave myself quite a bit of room. Well, I might have made it too tight. There we go. And yeah, I'm just gonna kind of cut this into a nice little top of a box. Nothing super fancy here. Obviously, every step, like after we hollowed the lid, we would have sanded and finished that. I like to finish them on the lathe. I like to use a friction polish because it's like saves me so much time. If you were doing a lacquer or something, you could do that after the fact. I've done that on a few things. One thing to think about, I'm going to put a point on this because I think they're kind of cool. But if you are giving this to somebody who might have to grab it really hard, you don't want to put anything pointy on the top. If it's very delicate and decorative, it's fine. I'm going to try to do one more cut because I like to do just a nice bevel rubbing cut. Yeah, that looks like a decent top to a box. A little bit of a point. I'd probably sand it just a little bit, but yeah, that is a box. And it should all sit together pretty nicely now. It's not a very deep box. It did not make a very big box. But that's okay. You only have to hold whatever you can fit in there. And I've got like dozens of these at home, so they always seem to work out okay. And this one fits actually a little tight. I'd probably sand this down just a little bit more. It would be a little bit hard to use, but with a little bit of sanding, and if I had sanded it on the lathe, that would have probably fit pretty well there. But and also some of it's hotter than the other side, so anyway, there we go.
There you go.
And I can't even tell you how long it's been since I made a box like start to finish, so you guys are lucky.